What does competition hang gliding have to do with stepping away from your animation practice? Keep listening to this week's Animator's Journey podcast episode to learn more. I'm your host, Lucas Ridley, a professional animator for the last 12 years, and I also teach online. And this is an excerpt from one of my Sunday office hours with one of my intermediate students about needing to step away from your animation to gain perspective and to actually become more efficient. Listen in, and if you want help on your own animation, either starting your animation journey or continuing it, check out animatorsjourney.com, where I also have a webinar that you can take right now.
Sometimes I'll see something and I'll think it's okay, the slow ins and all that, and the timing of everything. But then when I look back at it the following day or even a week later, it looks so slow. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I think a good example too is like talking about like paint and color and this kind of optical illusion that happens when you look at something gray next to something black or something white. And we were picking out color for the baby's room and we compared a green to another dark green, which made the green we picked look light. But our wall that we're painting it on is white. So then when we brought what we thought was a bright green to a white wall, we're like, oh, that's dark. And we went through that process like 3 or 4 times. I think the same thing happens with motion. It's like you just get used to seeing it relative to where you came from. It was faster, but then we're so close to the work, like you said in your example, like it took having a day away to kind of have a clean slate of, oh, that actually is actually now looking slow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's like fatigue too. Your eyes are
100%.
tired.
Yeah.
100%.
Animation takes time, even if everything lines up perfect. It takes even more time because you do need those step away moments to
the breaks there.
Reset. Yeah. Sometimes that comes in the form, like on a production, typically I like to have at least 3 shots that my team are working on.
Okay.
If we're waiting on feedback from the client or we're hitting a wall, or I don't have time to give them feedback because I have a team of 7 people all asking for feedback at the same time with maybe 3 shots. So I have 21 shots I'm having to give feedback on. If they're waiting on me, they have another shot they can keep working on. So out of the nature of working on production, typically you have that come out of the nature of the amount of things you're having to juggle anyways. But when you're working on your own personal shots and it's like it's all consuming, it's harder to get away from. Yeah.
I remember with that Pomodoro technique you talked about in the very beginning. Stepping away for 5 minutes is like golden. Like when I learned about it, it was like, oh, that makes sense, because I do get tired and a little anxious sometimes when I'm like reworking something. And then if I step away and come back,
you make more mistakes. It's like that comes out of through the day. So it's like you have the microcosm of that happening. And then you have like never get a major surgery done in the afternoon. Like this is a thing that happens in every profession.
Yeah.
If you ever have to go to court and get sentenced for something, go in the morning or come right after lunch. Like judges, I think it's in Freakonomics or somewhere. You get statisticians go through, okay, what were the outcomes based on time of day or fatigue or whatever? And you have much worse outcomes in the afternoon for surgeries.
That makes sense. That makes so much sense. Wow.
It's not just, it's statistically significant. It's, that it impacts. And same thing for, you have a grumpy judge who wants to go to lunch. You don't want to go right before lunch. It's to go in front of the judge. So I don't think you have probably a say in that. I've never had to go to court over stuff like that.
Anyway, but that's true, because when you go to work in the morning, I feel I'm more productive.
And that's why, like in Spain, they have siestas. Like certain cultures, they accept that as part of human nature, which is frustrating in terms of a westernized, an Americanized productivity. All that matters is just grinding with irrespective of what's really the most productive. So here's a hang gliding example where we're all flying in the same sky. Granted, it's changing. So depending on where you're at and in space, because thermals can come and go at all the time, but it's also about decision making. If I'm trying to race as fast as I can, and we're using thermals to fuel up essentially to get more altitude so then we can glide, I cannot allow myself to accept a thermal of a certain rate. If I'm going up and I'm looking at my variometers, what we use to track so many feet per second.
I meant to say feet per minute here.
If I'm going up at 50 feet per second, I would rather take the risk and land than there could be a 400 feet per second thermal right next to me. And because I'm scared of losing this 50 feet per second, I'm going to waste all this time going up in 50 feet per second. When I could just take the risk and go over here and I'm going to just go skyrocket and then I'll already be gone on my next glide. Well, The other version of myself is Humpty Dumpty over here, like just sitting on this one slow thermal. So anyways, it's like trying to figure out, knowing for yourself. For me, I know when I get to 2 or 3 in the morning is typically when I'm working until, to be able to like make these courses and make podcasts and do all this stuff that's not my day job. I know myself that I make, like internally, I'm talking to myself, I'm making poor decisions right now. I know I'm making bad decisions. Even when I tell myself I want to turn off, then I'm like, all right, let me look at Twitter for a minute. And I'm like, this is so, I just have to keep repeating, I'm making poor decisions, because that's the default when I get that tired. I'm like, I got to call it. And even when I say I got to call it, then I'm like, but let me, like Clash of Clans or something. Let me do a little. You are making bad decisions.
Interestingly, when I get home, I have to like refresh in some way, whether that's going to the gym or something, ironically, but you get a little more energy boost. But I know, just like you said, around 4:30, I am useless. I am just completely useless, where I'm just meandering, just trying to.
And that's when that rest thing happens, where it's like the thermal example is like the glide for hang gliding is the rest part. All we have to, we're just going in a straight line and we just hold the water here. The difficulty is staying in a thermal, because the thermal's moving, it's drifting with the wind, and we're having to like listen to the beeps. The thing beeps when we're going up. So it's like, we're always listening for the beeps, and it's like what we're trying to catch is invisible. So it's like very all consuming. And then when you're on glide, you're resting. Same thing. Like I feel like when I work, and this happens like an appetite too, where people say they're full, but if you actually change what you're eating, you're actually just tired of eating that flavor.
Oh, okay.
And then if you actually just change up that's why people like find they have room for dessert. I feel like at the end,
true.
You're like, let me just have a bite of yours. And then they end up eating more. Because you weren't actually full, you were just tired of eating that one thing, or that may be the case. It happens in all these different facets of life, I feel like, but having that rest or that you can change something up. Like back to the version of being in production, having 3 shots, even though maybe it's the same thing, you're doing it something slightly different about it. You get a bit more energy. When I come home, I want to play the piano, I'm still like doing something, but my mind is getting a rest in other ways.
That makes sense. Like you change the context.
Yeah. It's a juggle, and you have to know yourself. And then it's like, you can't, at least for myself, I can't, it's not like I have it figured out, because you're constantly battling the fatigue. It wouldn't be fatigue if you didn't have to constantly wrestle with it. I can't, it's not like I say all this and then I haven't magically figured out. I have to deal with this every night, every time. I feel like maybe someone else has it figured out, but that's me. But that's how I try to stay productive with this stuff and get more done. Cool.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast episode. Next week or the week after, I'm working on a longer podcast about the differences between living and working in the United States versus the United Kingdom, and the reasons why I personally chose to leave a higher wage and to come to the United Kingdom to get paid less. And I'll let you know the reasons behind that and what I think the differences are between the two countries working in animation. Hope to see you there in that episode. Click subscribe so you get notified of when that episode releases. And as always, you can find me at animatorsjourney.com, where you can get one-on-one mentoring with me. Whether you're beginning or continuing your journey, I have courses made for you. Thanks for listening.